One of the biggest upsets in the U.S. Open Cup just took place, and we have the man who scored the opening goal with us today. Sean Totsch, defender from Louisville City, is here to talk us through this big win, the historic win against an MLS team. Sean, thanks so much for joining us. I'm sure it's been a little bit of a whirlwind for you and the team after a big win like this. But first off, just walk us through your goal.
Yeah, I mean, it was I think it was a result of a lot of intensity and momentum that we kind of built up in that first 25 30 minutes of the game. We talked about being brave, coming out on the front foot and asserting ourselves as a team, and I think we did that. I mean, you could feel at the stadium, and I'm sure anyone watching it, that we were there, we meant business, and we weren't gonna sit back and wait for them to take the game to us. It was kind of the result of that work and that mentality, but it was actually funny. I was just talking to Simon about it, that Monday after training, I went up to him and was like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I feel like I haven't gotten the end of any set pieces yet this year. I don't know. I feel like I'm making good hard runs. I don't know if it's like the service or my timing or what. Usually it's, I've got a decent track record of getting to the near post and glancing some headers. And he's like, well, just get to the near post and glance the header. And, it was, funny enough that, that's the way that we got started yesterday.
Yeah, and you guys started out strong. It came from a set piece, like we said, a corner kick. Can you describe the feeling you had as you see the ball hit the back of the net? I know it was in the 26th minute, but what does that feel like, and what does it mean for your team early on in a game like that? As you said, you started out strong.
Yeah, it meant a lot. I actually didn't see the ball go in. I kind of fell backwards, and I really didn't even realize I scored at first. I mean, I heard the eruption, and then one of the guys in the team, Jake Morris, ran up to me. He's pointing at him. He's like, "You scored, bro. Tuck it in. Go to the corner." And I'm like, "Oh, I guess I scored." It was just, kind of putting myself in the right spot. And, but it's those feelings, it's hard to fully describe them, but it's a whole body sensation that I feel like, it's just of excitement, joy, great to get my first of the year in that fashion. And, I just really enjoy going to the corner and celebrating with the guys and the fans all erupting. And, the atmosphere was great last night.
Yeah, it sounded great on TV. It looked like it was a great atmosphere. We'll get into that in a moment. Going into the game, so you're playing an MLS side. You get to host them at home through the U.S. Open Cup. But you're playing against a team in Austin FC that's payroll is about $11 million, I believe. And as a USL team, do you feel like, did you guys have an underdog mindset or a little bit of a chip on the shoulder kind of attitude going into it, as if you felt you had to prove something, being on a national stage like that, playing an MLS team?
We actually played them in the preseason, and we had a really good match. And we had stretches in that game as well in preseason that we took it to them, and we're unlucky not to score in our preseason game. So it kind of added to our belief that we're like, all right, we've played this team not that long ago and played well. I think one thing that we just take a lot of pride in at being at this club is playing at our stadium, and no matter who comes, whether it's an amateur team, another USL team, an MLS team, or a team from overseas, that we genuinely believe that when we're at home playing at our field with our fans supporting us, that we like our chances against any team.
Well, I can understand that. You guys have a great culture there, and that kind of leads me to my next question. How important, in the U.S. Open Cup, you get a draw, and sometimes it's home, sometimes it's away. That's just how it goes in cup competitions a lot of times. How important do you really feel as a player? You're out there on the pitch, and like you said, you could feel the vibe in the stadium and the fans. How important do you feel it is to have a game like that in your home stadium in front of your home fans?
We talk about expectations and standards, and while I love playing at home, I think whether we were playing at their stadium or ours, the intensity would have been the same. That's just something that we believe in and preach on a daily basis here, that, we make no excuses, and, we don't have to be at home to win.
Sure.
With that being said, it really, kind of, it's a little bit easier to put yourself in the right frame of mind, comfort, ready to go and try to execute our game plan. And it kind of settles you into the game a little bit more when you're playing at home.
Yeah, sure. And you guys are renowned as a club, as a USL side, for having a great culture there in Louisville, with your academies, your youth teams, your stadium's fantastic. So it just is great to see that come to fruition in a game like that. If you're just tuning in, welcome to another episode of Straight from the Training Ground, the podcast where we share our love for the beautiful game and the people out in their communities doing beautiful things. And we're here with Sean Totsch. He is a defender for Louisville City. Scored the opening goal in a 2-1 win last night in a big U.S. Open Cup win against Austin FC. Sean, what does a win like this, you think, say for Louisville City and the culture and the community that you guys have created? It was your first win over an MLS team officially in about 8 years.
We, as a club, have talked about, being hard to beat. That's one of the things, is that we want to, no matter the team that comes in, you're gonna have a hard game when you play against us. And the mentality that the whole group showed yesterday was class. I just feel like you could see that. You can see the buy-in to, whether it was our strikers pressing, or the whole team recovering to get back behind the ball when we got broken, or when we're pressing them and we're moving up the field, everyone getting forward. It was just a real collective performance. And, I think when you see that, you can just have that visual and that sense of the identity of what the club is. It's not just, what we speak about, because, a lot of teams will say cultural expectations. This is what it means. What does it mean to you? But the words at time can be easy to say, and what it really comes down to is your actions. And I think that everyone who's on the field, whether they started or came on, showed with their actions what it really means to be a part of the team.
Yeah, and I'm sure it was great to see, like you said earlier, to see you guys be aggressive right from the start, and it's got to give you confidence to grow into the game as you keep playing that well collectively. I think what you're talking about, the hardest thing is to do that collectively, make it all work on the pitch. What do you think that as a league, and I don't want you to speak necessarily for other teams, but what do you think that these kind of results, we keep seeing these pop up every once in a while in the U.S. Open Cup. What do you think these kind of results say and continue to say about USL teams, Sean?
I think what it says about the USL teams is that, there's quality players here. And I think, myself, throughout my, long time playing in the league, but a lot of players who I've played with, have been overlooked and, counted out, and, not necessarily given the opportunities to play at a higher level because of, the seen as the league is a lesser product, lesser quality. But it's really built off of a lot of guys who are, willing to give everything they have to the game. And, you can't shortchange what that effort and that buy-in to win, and that winning mentality. And that just belief, because, on any given day, a player can feel well and, and show up, but to be able to do it day in and day out and grind and have that winning mentality every single day is something that, we speak about, but, a lot of players across the league, in the USL, have that mentality, and I think it's often overlooked.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And Sean, we'll get you out of here on this last one. So looking forward, the U.S. Open Cup, which I personally love, and I'm sure as a player, it's got to be something you guys love to be a part of. And I wish more people in the U.S. understood it and paid more attention to the U.S. Open Cup, by the way. But with that being said, it's still early on in the season. You guys have a new interim coach right now. What do you think this win does for the team? And just what do you hope to accomplish throughout the rest of the season moving forward, throughout the whole season?
We speak about it on a daily basis here of our expectations, and there's our daily expectations, and then there's our overall expectations of and goals. Daily thing is we're trying to win everything we do. We're trying to put in a maximum effort. Whether that's in the film room or sometimes it's recovery, sometimes it's lifting, sometimes it's on the field. There's a whole bunch of aspects to that. But in the grand scheme of things, we're a team that genuinely believes that we can win the Open Cup. We're a team that we want to win the regular season. We want to win the playoffs of the league. Whatever competition we go in, we're trying to win. We're not, taking days off, taking games off. We don't think that, all right, we're rotating the roster and, we don't have as good of a chance. Every single player on the team here is here for a reason, and that's to compete at the highest level and to maintain those standards throughout the entire season.
And belief and high expectations can take you a long ways, correct?
They really can.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, if you're just joining us, Sean Totsch, he scored the opening goal last night in a 2-1 win for Louisville City as they took down MLS side Austin FC with a payroll of $11 million. It's great to see that. We love to see it in the U.S. Open Cup. And Sean, I'm sure you've been really busy with all kinds of media obligations and training and recovery today and all those things. So really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us here on Straight from the Training Ground. And we look forward to continuing to follow you guys throughout the season and continue that U.S. Open Cup run.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jason. I appreciate your coverage and, highlighting stories like our team here and other teams around the league.